Hello friends, welcome to the Night Watchman channel. Today I'm going to tell you a terrifying and thrilling creepy horror story that will make you feel the chill of fear. If you enjoy my story, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can feel your love and support through your likes and subscriptions. I never thought a fast food job would end up haunting me for the rest of my life. My name's Ethan Cole, and up until that night, I was a full-time employee at the Burger King on Ashwood Avenue, a small, dimly lit street in Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't one of those bustling city locations, just a quiet spot wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop. I used to think that was a blessing. Turns out I was wrong. I'd been working 10-hour shifts almost every day. The work was repetitive, the customers rude, and the smell of grease clung to my clothes even after I showered. But I needed the money. Every cent I earned went toward my dream of moving out of my grandfather's small fading house, the same one I'd lived in ever since my parents died in a car crash when I was 4. Grandpa Henry was all I had left. He was a retired mailman, sharp-minded for his age, and had this quirky sense of humor that could make any bad day a little lighter. Our favorite pastime was playing Duck Hunt on his old Nintendo system. The way he'd cheer me on always made me laugh. "Come on, Ethan. Don't let that bird get away." "Got it, Grandpa. That's my boy. You shoot that birdie down, son." It was one of those tiny traditions that kept us close, something to remind me that life wasn't all about work, bills, and fast food fries. My days were predictable. Wake up at 10, get dressed, grab a stale bagel, drive to work, and spend the rest of the day taking orders or flipping burgers. Night shifts were quieter, though. Most customers were regulars, retirees, lonely folks, and the occasional late-night traveler. But lately, we'd started attracting strange types, people who didn't seem hungry as much as they seemed lost. That's when he started showing up. The first night I saw him, it was around 9:15 p.m. He walked through the door dressed as the Burger King mascot, full costume, red velvet cape, plastic jeweled crown, rubbery smiling mask, the works. I remember freezing mid-order, half expecting my coworkers to burst out laughing. Welcome to Burger King, sir. Can I take your order?" He didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, breathing through that plastic grin. Then in a muffled, deep voice, he said, "30 Whoppers. I'm sorry. Did you say 30? 30 Whoppers. Make Whoppers now." I chuckled nervously, assuming it was some kind of prank. "All right, sir. Just the sandwiches, or would you like to make it a combo?" "Have it your way." He slid $150 in cash across the counter and shuffled to a booth near the back. I watched him set up his phone on a salt shaker, recording, maybe live streaming. When the cooks brought out the mountain of burgers, I placed them on his table and walked away. Out of curiosity, I peeked from behind the counter. He was eating. No, devouring. One Whopper after another, with both hands like an animal. I counted at least 10 before he started to slow down. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, his body slumped against the booth. He was out cold. By midnight, the store was empty except for me and Ashley, the night manager. She looked at the man in the mascot suit, then at me. "You gotta wake him up, Ethan. We close at 12. You sure you don't want to do it?" "Nope. You're the brave one, remember." I sighed and walked toward him. The smell of cold beef and sweat hit me hard. I nudged his shoulder. "Hey, sir? We're closing now. You'll need to leave." His head snapped up. The mask tilted toward me. "Me? Whopper? Make me Whopper, then I leave." "Sir, kitchen's closed. You need to go." He stood up, tall, unsteady, and shuffled toward the door. For a moment, I thought he was going to lunge at me, but he didn't. He just whispered as he walked out, "Have it your way." Ethan. My blood went cold. I hadn't told him my name. I clocked out, called an Uber, and got home a little after 1 a.m. Grandpa was already asleep in his recliner, TV humming softly. I gave him a light pat on the shoulder before heading to shower. The water was warm, calming. I closed my eyes, trying to wash away the stress. But then, a sound, a faint knock, then another. Knock, knock, knock. "Grandpa?" "That you?" I asked through the curtain. Silence. Then a familiar voice, muffled, deep, and cheerful. "Open the door. Have it your way." My stomach dropped. "Who the hell's there?" "Open the door, Ethan. Make me Whopper." He said my name again. My heart was pounding. I grabbed the towel, nearly slipping as I stepped out. "Get the hell out of here." "Fine," thud. "Have it your way." The door shook as someone began slamming their head into it. Over and over. The wood started to splinter. "Stop! I'm calling the cops!" The pounding got faster, louder, then suddenly silence. I stood there frozen. Then, a low voice whispering through the cracks. "Here's Johnny." The door burst open. The plastic face of the Burger King mascot poking through the hole. His mask was cracked, one eye visible behind it. Bloodshot, wild. I screamed. My body acted before my mind did. I reached under the sink. My grandpa's old pistol was still there, the one he'd told me never to touch. The man lunged. I raised the gun. And then I heard my grandpa's voice behind me. Calm, steady. "That's it, Ethan. Go on." "Shoot the birdie." Tears blurred my vision. I don't want to." "Shoot the birdie, son." The mascot charged forward, shrieking through the mask. "Have it your way." I pulled the trigger. Once. Twice. He fell, a heavy, lifeless heap on the bathroom floor. The plastic crown rolled to my feet. I stared at it, trembling. Grandpa's voice echoed again, softer this time. "That's my boy. You got the birdie." The police arrived 20 minutes later. They found me on the floor clutching the gun, covered in blood and grease. The man in the costume had no ID, no phone, no car keys. Just 30 Whopper wrappers stuffed into his pockets. They said he'd been dead long before the first shot. Poisoned, possibly. But if that was true, then who was pounding on my door? Burger King reopened. I didn't go back. Grandpa doesn't mention that night, but sometimes when we play duck hunt, he smiles in that same old way and says, "Don't miss this time, Ethan. Gotta shoot the birdie." And every night before I go to sleep, I swear I still hear that cheerful, muffled voice whispering from somewhere outside my window. Have it your way. Story 2. I never thought something as ordinary as grabbing a sandwich from Burger King could change the way I look at food forever. My name's Lindsay Carter, and I've lived most of my adult life in a small suburban town just outside Springfield, Illinois. Nothing ever really happens here. It's quiet, predictable, the kind of place where the biggest local gossip is when the high school football team loses a match. My days were mostly the same. Wake up, work my 9-to-5 data entry job, come home, and repeat. My husband Aaron worked at construction and was rarely home before 10 p.m. Most nights I'd eat alone. Cooking had never been my strong suit, and after a long day, the last thing I wanted was to dirty the kitchen for just myself. That's where Burger King came in. The branch on Elm Street was just a 10-minute walk from my apartment. It became my little escape. Greasy comfort food, the smell of grilled patties, the hum of the soda machine. There was something soothing about the routine. I'd order the same thing almost every time. A chicken tender crisp sandwich with fries and a Diet Coke. I knew most of the staff there by name. Friendly faces, polite greetings, no surprises. Until one evening, something changed. It was a chilly Thursday night in October, about 8 p.m. The restaurant was half empty, just a few students sitting by the window and an older man reading a newspaper. As I walked in, I noticed something off. Unfamiliar faces behind the counter. The usual team was gone. One guy in particular caught my attention. He looked to be in his late 20s, tall, pale, with stringy hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in days. His name tag read Kyle. When our eyes met, a strange smile crept across his face, the kind of smile that felt too personal for a stranger. "Evening, ma'am," he said, leaning slightly forward. "What can I get you?" Hi," I muttered, glancing down at the menu even though I already knew what I wanted. "A chicken tender crisp, please." To go. He didn't type anything into the register right away. Instead, he tilted his head. "To go?" "You sure yes," I replied, trying to sound polite. He smirked. "It's better fresh, you know." You could sit and eat here. Keep me company. That made my stomach twist. No thanks, I said quickly. Just to go, suit yourself, he murmured, eyes drifting, uncomfortably, down toward my chest. Before turning away, I shifted my weight, feeling an icy unease crawl up my spine. The guy gave me bad vibes, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was just socially awkward. I paid, took my bag, and hurried home. The sandwich tasted fine. The next day, I even convinced myself I was just being paranoid. But when I returned a few nights later, Kyle was there again. "Back so soon?" he said with a grin. "Couldn't resist the tender crisp, huh?" I forced a laugh. "Something like that." Over the next 2 weeks, my visits continued, and so did Kyle's weird behavior. He'd make unsettling comments. "You know, it's funny," he once said, sliding my sandwich across the counter. "Some customers stick to your mind." "You're one of those." I tried ignoring him, keeping the interaction as short as possible. Still, it lingered in my mind, especially when I started feeling sick. It began as mild stomach cramps. I figured it was the grease, maybe too much fast food. But then it got worse. Sharp pains, nausea, sleepless nights. Aaron noticed. "Linz, you've been eating that junk every day," he said, concerned. "You should stop for a while." I know, I sighed. It's easy, you know? And I don't think it's the food. But deep down, something didn't sit right. My mind kept going back to Kyle. The smirk, the stare, the strange way he'd emphasize the word fresh. One night, I couldn't shake the thought. "What if he's doing something to my food?" I told Aaron. He frowned. "You think he's tampering with it?" "I don't know," I whispered. "But something feels wrong." Aaron rubbed his jaw. "Then let's find out." 2 nights later, we decided to go together. We walked in around 8:30. Kyle was behind the counter again, that same unsettling grin plastered across his face. "Well, look who it is," he said. "Didn't expect you back so soon. And with company." "This is my husband," I said firmly. Aaron gave him a short nod, his expression unreadable. Kyle chuckled. "Guess you'll be wanting your tender crisp again, huh?" "Yes," I said quietly. "To go." He turned, whistling as he prepared the sandwich. I could feel Aaron watching him carefully. When Kyle handed over the brown paper bag, I noticed the sandwich felt oddly warm, almost too warm, like it had been sitting out. We took a booth in the corner and opened the bag. Aaron unwrapped the sandwich and frowned. "Smells weird," he said. I leaned in. He was right. It had a strange, earthy odor. Not like chicken, but like wet soil. "What the hell?" he muttered, pulling the top bun back. I gasped. Something moved. At first, I thought it was steam. Then I realized tiny, slick gray slugs were crawling across the lettuce and chicken patty. "Oh my God!" I screamed, shoving the sandwich away as bile rose in my throat. Aaron's eyes went wide with fury. He shot up, stormed to the counter, and slammed the bag down. "What the hell is this?" he roared. "You sick bastard! What did you put in her food?" The restaurant went dead silent. Kyle blinked, pretending to look confused. "Sir, I have no idea what you're talking about." "Bullshit!" Aaron shouted, pointing at the sandwich. "You think this is funny? You think poisoning people's a joke?" The manager, a stocky man in his 50s named Mr. Collins, rushed over. "Sir, please calm down." "Calm down? My wife's been eating this garbage for weeks. You've got slugs crawling in your damn chicken." Other customers began leaving, disgusted. Kyle's smirk didn't fade. "Maybe she brought it in herself," he said casually. "Some people like attention." Aaron nearly lunged at him, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I said, trembling. "He's not worth it." Mr. Collins, instead of investigating, ordered us to leave. "You're disrupting my restaurant. Take your accusations elsewhere." That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. We called the police that same night. I handed them the sandwich, still crawling with slugs, sealed in a plastic bag. They promised to look into it. Weeks passed. No calls, no updates. When I finally followed up, the officer told me they couldn't find enough evidence of deliberate tampering. A few days later, I walked by that Burger King again. The building was closed. Windows dark, a "for lease" sign taped to the glass. I never saw Kyle again. Sometimes I wonder if the cops scared him off, or if he just moved on to another town, Another Burger King, another victim. Even now, the smell of fried chicken makes my stomach turn. I used to love that sandwich. Now I can't even look at one without remembering the writhing movement beneath the bun. And every once in a while, when I drive past a fast food joint late at night, I swear I see a pale man behind the counter, smiling that same knowing smile. Story 3. I never thought flipping burgers could turn into something out of a nightmare. It all started back in early May, late spring, when the air carried that warm, dusty scent of summer creeping in. I had just landed a full-time job at a fast food joint called King's Flame Burgers, a local franchise located off Route 47 in Clearwater, Ohio. I'd been struggling to make rent at my tiny apartment complex, one of those faded red brick buildings where the hallways always smelled like burnt popcorn and someone's cat. The restaurant was only a 15-minute walk from my place, which made it convenient. I figured it would be a decent gig, at least until I saved enough money to move somewhere better. The first few weeks went fine. I got used to the routine, preparing orders at lightning speed, managing the drive-thru, cleaning greasy tables, scrubbing the fryers, and pretending to smile at customers who didn't even look at me. The pay wasn't much, but it was steady. Everything seemed normal, except for the night shifts. My boss, Mr. Carson, a heavy-set guy in his late 40s with a permanent sweat stain on his cap, liked assigning me late hours because I was the new kid. He called it earning your stripes. I didn't argue. Rent was rent. During most of these shifts, I worked alongside Derek, another new hire about my age, 21. He was sarcastic, funny, and knew how to make those endless hours feel less suffocating. Sometimes he'd pull pranks or play songs on his phone when the store went quiet. But then there was Frank. Frank was a middle-aged guy who'd been working there for over a decade. Everyone said he'd been through some rough stuff, though no one ever explained what that meant. He moved slowly, spoke in a low, breathy tone, and had this unnerving habit of staring at people longer than necessary, like he was trying to memorize your face. I tried to keep my distance, but as the weeks went by, that became harder. One Thursday night, I clocked in for a closing shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while the fryers hissed in the background. The restaurant had that faint stench of old oil and burnt buns, the usual. Derek was running drive-thru while I handled the grill. "Hey man," he said, poking his head out of the window. "You seen Frank yet? He's supposed to be on dishes tonight." "Not yet," I replied, flipping a patty. "Maybe he called out." "No way. He never calls out." Just as he said that, the back door creaked open. Frank walked in, still wearing his faded uniform. He wasn't smiling, not that he ever did, but something about his face looked wrong, pale, sweaty, like he hadn't slept in days. "Evening, boys," he muttered. "Ready for another long one?" "Always," Derek said with a fake grin. I nodded politely, trying to ignore the way Frank's eyes lingered on me. The first few hours went by without incident. We cleaned, cooked, served, repeated. But when I went to use the employee restroom near the back storage room, I realized someone was already in there. Through the small gap between the door and the frame, I could see Frank's uniform. "Hey man, you almost done?" I asked. There was silence for a few seconds. Then I heard the sound of water running. Finally, Frank's voice came from inside, slow and drawn out. "Why rush? You can wait, can't you?" His tone made my stomach twist. "Yeah, sure," I said, stepping back. But curiosity got the better of me. Through the mirror that hung opposite the bathroom door, I could faintly see his reflection. His head slightly turned toward me. His eyes met mine through the mirror, and his lips curved into this crooked smile. That was enough for me. I walked off and decided to hold it. When I returned to the grill, Derek raised an eyebrow. "You good?" "Yeah," I muttered. "Frank's just being weird again. Man, that dude gives me the creeps. Last night he told me he likes watching young guys work hard." I almost quit right there. We both laughed it off, but the unease stuck with me. 2 days later, something even stranger happened. When I showed up for my shift, there was someone outside the restaurant. A person dressed in the King's Flame mascot costume, a grinning flame-headed king with a plastic crown. The figure stood near the parking lot, waving its arms stiffly to attract cars. It was already dark, and the street lamps flickered faintly over the pavement. I couldn't see who was inside the suit, but the stillness in the movements made my skin crawl. I went inside through the back door. Derek was cleaning the prep station. "Hey," I said, "who's out there in the king suit?" He laughed. "Oh, that's Frank. Mr. Carson gave him the promo gig tonight. Says it'll bring in more customers." "You're kidding." "I wish I was. I think he's just scaring people off." That night, business was slow. Around midnight, after cleaning up the kitchen, Derek went to the restroom, leaving me alone at the counter. I scrolled through my phone to stay awake. That's when I heard it. Faint footsteps from the hallway behind the fryers. "Derek!" I called out. No answer. The footsteps got louder, heavier, deliberate. I turned toward the sound and my heart nearly stopped. Standing near the mop sink was the mascot, the King's Flame costume, its huge plastic grin illuminated by the fluorescent light. The figure didn't move at first. Then slowly, it lifted its arm. In its hand was a kitchen knife. "Frank?" I whispered, backing up. "Frank, stop. This isn't funny." The mascot tilted its head to the side, just slightly. That same slow, animal-like movement Frank always made when he stared at me. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Don't come any closer," I shouted. The figure stepped forward. Without thinking, I grabbed the first thing I could, a long metal spatula from the counter. "I swear to God, if you—" The mascot lunged. We both slipped. There was lettuce scattered across the floor from earlier. The knife clattered out of its hand, skidding beneath the fryer. I landed hard on my elbow, my vision blurring for a second. Then instinct took over. I reached for the knife first. My fingers wrapped around the handle as the mascot struggled to stand. "Frank, stop!" I screamed again. "Don't make me—" He lunged once more. I stabbed. Once. Twice. Again. The sound, a wet, heavy thud, filled the kitchen. I kept stabbing until the body stopped moving. Panting, I yanked off the mascot's plastic head. What I saw made the world go silent. It wasn't Frank. It was Derek. His eyes were wide open, mouth gasping silently. Blood spread across the tile floor like spilled soda. The knife slipped from my hand. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. "No, no, no, no," I whispered, shaking. "It was supposed to be Frank. It had to be Frank." That's when I heard the back door open. Standing there under the cold fluorescent light was Frank. Out of costume. He just stared at me, calm as ever. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "He was only trying to scare you." I couldn't move. Frank crouched beside Derek's body and lifted the king's head back up, setting it gently beside him like some kind of offering. Then without another word, he stood and left through the back door. By the time I called 911, he was gone. The cops said it was a tragic misunderstanding. They called it self-defense gone wrong. But every night since then, I see that mascot in my dreams, standing at the end of the hallway, waving, the grin frozen wide. And sometimes when I walk past the closed-down King's Flame on Route 47, I swear I can still see someone standing inside the dark kitchen, watching me through the glass. Maybe it's Frank, maybe it's Derek, or maybe it's just the king. Story 4. I never thought flipping burgers at midnight could scar me for life. It's strange how the most ordinary nights can twist into something so unthinkable, you start questioning if you're still awake. My name's Aaron Clark, and about 8 months ago, I moved to a small town called Maple Hollow, just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I'd recently dropped out of community college after struggling with tuition and mental burnout. My parents weren't thrilled about it, but I promised them I'd find a job, save up, and get back on track. That's how I ended up working at Burger King on the night shift. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent for my tiny studio apartment 5 minutes away. I liked the quiet nights, fewer customers, and less drama. It was mostly me, the buzz of the fryers and the faint hum of the soda machine. That night, the one that ruined drive-thrus for me forever, started like any other. The clock read 11:47 p.m. I was scrolling through YouTube on my phone, half listening to the sound of rain tapping against the drive-thru window. Mondays were usually dead quiet. Our manager, Rick, had left early because his kid was sick, leaving me to close the store alone. I didn't mind. I'd done it dozens of times. I remember stretching my neck and saying to myself, "One more hour, Aaron, then you can crash." Just then, I heard the sound of tires splashing through puddles outside. A car rolled into the drive-thru lane. The motion sensor chimed through the headset, ding, startling me a bit. I put my phone away and turned on my customer service voice. "Welcome to Burger King," I said, forcing a cheerful tone. "May I take your order?" A man's voice came through the speaker. Low, slow, with an edge of something off. "Yeah," he said, "we're hungry." I blinked. "We?" When the car rolled up to the window, I saw him. A middle-aged man in a bright Hawaiian shirt, his thinning hair slicked back. His smile was way too wide, like it was painted on. But what really froze me wasn't him. It was the passenger seat. Sitting beside him was what looked like a skeleton, dressed in a floral sundress and cheap blonde wig. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Halloween decoration, maybe? But the way he turned toward it, the way he talked to it, made my skin crawl. "What'll you have tonight, sir?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. He looked at the skeleton lovingly and said, "A Whopper for me? And what'll you have, darling?" He tilted his head, listening, like she'd actually responded. Then he chuckled. "Oh, right. A cheeseburger." She never changes. My throat tightened. "Sure thing, sir. 1 Whopper and 1 cheeseburger. That'll be $9.42. He paid in cash, still whispering to the skeleton. I caught words like, "You're beautiful," and "Ignore her. She's jealous." He drove off with a cheerful wave, and I sat frozen, staring at the rain-slick asphalt long after his taillights disappeared. For the next few nights, he kept coming back. Same time, same car, same order, same skeleton. I stopped trying to make sense of it. People were weird, especially at 1 a.m. I told myself it wasn't my business. Until one night, things escalated. It was pouring outside. Lightning flashed across the sky, and thunder rattled the windows. I was closing up early when his car pulled in again. I groaned quietly, already knowing what to expect. He rolled down the window. "Evening, sweetheart," he said. "Jenny wants her cheeseburger." I checked the kitchen display. We were out of cheese. Great. I'm sorry, sir," I said. "We're running low on cheese tonight. Would you like to substitute it with something else?" His face twitched. "Oh no," he said, his tone turning sharp. "But Jenny loves cheese. It's her favorite." "I understand, sir," I replied carefully, "but we don't have any right now. How about a Whopper instead?" He turned slowly toward the skeleton. "Hear that, Jenny? She says you can't have your cheese tonight." He chuckled low and dry. "She doesn't care about you." My patience snapped. "Sir, maybe Jenny could use a salad, or a trip to the graveyard." He froze. His eyes widened, then his lips curved into a grin. Cold, unsettling. "Oh," he said softly, "I get it. You're jealous, aren't you?" "Jenny, she's jealous. Isn't that sweet?" I stared at him, trying not to lose it. "Sir, please just take your food and leave." He leaned closer to the window, his breath fogging the glass. "You'll regret saying that." Then he drove away. No food, no word. Just gone. A week passed. No sign of him. I thought maybe he'd gotten bored, or maybe I'd scared him off. I even started laughing about it with the day shift workers. The skeleton guy, we called him. But one Friday night around midnight, I saw headlights again. When he pulled up, he was alone. No skeleton. No Jenny. "Welcome to Burger King," I said, forcing calm. He smiled. "Just me tonight." 1 Whopper. I made the order and handed it to him. He took it silently and drove off. But instead of leaving, he parked across the street, got out, and sat on the hood of his car, staring directly at me. He ate the burger in slow, exaggerated bites. Mayo dripped down his chin, mixing with ketchup that looked disturbingly like blood. He never broke eye contact. When he finished, he licked his fingers, waved at me, and drove away. That night, I went home shaking. 2 nights later, Rick told me to call the cops if the man ever came back. "Don't play hero," he warned. "Just call 911 and stay inside." I nodded, thinking it was over anyway. But I was wrong. It was a Thursday, around 12:15 a.m. I was counting the register when I heard it. The creak of tires pulling into the lot. My stomach dropped. It was him. only this time. The passenger seat wasn't empty. A young woman sat slumped beside him. Not a skeleton, not a doll. A real girl. Her head tilted to one side, blonde hair tangled, makeup smeared. Even through the glass, I smelled the alcohol. He smiled at me through the window. "Told you Jenny was real," he said. My fingers shook as I reached for the phone under the counter. 911, what's your emergency?" I whispered. Before I could finish, he leaned forward, pulled something from the glove compartment, a wrench. "Watch closely," he said. "I'll prove she's real." Then he started beating her. The first hit cracked against her skull with a sound I'll never forget. The second one splattered the inside of the car window. I screamed so loud I dropped the phone. Blood sprayed across the steering wheel as he kept swinging, shouting between blows, "She's real! She's real! She's real!" By the time the sirens wailed in the distance, the girl wasn't moving anymore. He turned to me covered in blood, smiling that same awful grin. "You believe me now, Aaron?" That's the last thing I remember before collapsing. I woke up 2 days later in the hospital. My boss was there. He told me the police caught the man at the scene. The girl, Jessica Parker, 23, had been picked up from a local bar after she passed out drunk. The man's name was Howard Kramer. Turns out his wife Jennifer had died 3 years ago. Guess what her nickname was? Jenny. He'd been keeping her skeleton in his apartment all this time. They said he'll never walk free again. But none of that makes me feel better. I still hear his voice sometimes whispering, "She's real." And every time I drive past a Burger King, I swear I see that same blue car parked near the dumpsters, waiting. Story 5. I woke up that morning with a headache that felt like it had crawled into my skull overnight and decided to stay there. The air in my small apartment was cold, stale, the kind of air that clings to you when you've barely slept. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No cars, no voices, just the faint hum of my old refrigerator. My name's Lena Brooks, and I live in Maple Hollow, a quiet, worn-out town tucked somewhere between the Tennessee border and nowhere. It's not the kind of place you move to, it's the kind of place you end up in. The population's small enough that you start recognizing faces at the gas station, and yet somehow you never really know anyone. I rolled out of bed and rubbed my eyes. It was already noon. My shift at Burger King didn't start until midnight, but my sleep schedule was a mess. Night shifts do that to you. They twist your sense of time until morning feels like night, and the hours blur together into one long stretch of fatigue. I shuffled into the kitchen, poured myself some coffee, and leaned against the counter, staring at the peeling wallpaper. The caffeine didn't do much. My body was awake, but my mind was still swimming somewhere between dreams and reality. My roommate Kara walked in, her hair tied up in a messy bun and her hoodie hanging loosely over one shoulder. She worked mornings at a diner downtown, so we barely saw each other. Still, she smiled when she saw me. "Morning, zombie," she teased, grabbing a slice of bread and tossing it in the toaster. "Feels like midnight," I muttered. "That's what you get for working graveyard shifts," she said. "You sure that place doesn't creep you out?" Every time I pass by it after dark, it looks dead inside. I smirked weakly. "It is dead. Just me, one other worker, and a bunch of broken fryers." Kara laughed, but I could tell she wasn't entirely joking. There was something unsettling about that Burger King on the edge of town. It sat right off Route 46, next to an abandoned car wash and a field that stretched endlessly into the dark. Even during the day, the place looked tired. Faded sign, flickering bulbs, an empty parking lot. At night, it was worse. The light from the dining area barely reached the lot, leaving half the place swallowed by shadow. Still, it was work. And after losing my job at the grocery store last year, I couldn't afford to be picky. By the time I clocked in that night, the wind outside had picked up. Leaves skittered across the asphalt as I parked my old Ford near the side entrance. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly inside, casting everything in that sickly, pale glow that made even the cleanest surfaces look grimy. "Hey, Lena!" It was Derek, the night manager. He was about 30, tall and quiet, always carrying that look of someone who'd stopped caring a long time ago. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "Drive-thru's yours tonight. Fryer's acting up again, so don't use the left one." "Got it." The first few hours dragged on in silence. No customers, just the sound of the ventilation fan humming above me and the faint pop of grease from the fryer. I like that part, honestly. The solitude. I'd plug in my earbuds, clean the counters, and let my mind drift. Around 2:10 a.m., the headset crackled. "Welcome to Burger King," I said automatically. "Can I take your order?" For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice, deep and slow, came through. "Are you open?" "Yes, sir." 24 hours. Another pause. "Good. I'll be there in a minute." The line went dead. Something about the tone made my skin crawl. It wasn't threatening, just off. Detached, like the person on the other end wasn't entirely there. I shook it off. People were weird at 2 a.m. That was nothing new. A few minutes later, headlights swept across the front of the store. A dark sedan rolled slowly into the drive-thru lane. I straightened my cap and tried to look alert. The window rolled down halfway, and I caught a glimpse of the driver. A man, maybe in his late 30s. Pale face, dark eyes, a faint shadow of stubble. His expression was blank. "Hey there," I said, trying to sound friendly. "What can I get you tonight?" He didn't answer at first. He just looked at me. Not at me, but through me. Then he said softly, "Whopper meal. No onions." "Sure thing." I punched it in. "That'll be $8.42. He handed me a $10 bill, his fingers brushing mine. Ice cold. I turned to grab his change, but when I looked back up, he was still staring. Not blinking, not moving. "You okay, sir?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled faintly. "You're new here, right?" Been here about 3 months." He nodded slowly. "Not long enough to see it yet." "See what?" He didn't answer. He just chuckled under his breath, a dry, rasping sound, and looked toward the back of the restaurant. I followed his gaze, but there was nothing there. Just the dim reflection of the kitchen lights in the glass. When I turned back, he was gone. The car had rolled forward, the taillights disappearing around the corner. I blinked. What the hell? I grabbed the bag with his order, expecting him to be waiting at the pickup window, but when I got there, nothing. The drive-thru lane was empty. The car was gone. "Derek," I called out. "Did you see that guy drive off?" He looked up from his clipboard near the counter. "What guy?" "The one that ordered the Whopper." Just now he frowned. "You sure someone was there?" I didn't hear anything on the speaker. Yeah, I'm sure," I stammered. "He was right here a second ago." Derek gave me a look that was half concern, half annoyance. "You've been working too many nights." "Go splash some water on your face," I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Maybe I was tired. The rest of the shift went quietly until just before closing. I was wiping down the counter when I noticed something outside. A car, the same black sedan, parked in the far corner of the lot. Engine off. Lights out. My chest tightened. "Derek," I said softly. "He's back." He looked up from his phone. "Who?" "The guy. The one I told you about." He sighed and walked to the window. "I don't see anyone." The lot was empty again, but I knew what I saw. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling wouldn't leave. Every sound made me flinch. The hum of the freezer, the faint rattle of the vents, the occasional thump from the back room. At 3:17 a.m., the headset crackled again. "Welcome to Burger King," I said hesitantly. Silence. Then the same voice whispered, "You didn't lock the back door." My blood ran cold. I turned to Derek. "Did you just—" He shook his head. "What are you talking about?" The voice came again, lower this time, almost playful. "You should check." Before I could move, a loud bang echoed from the back of the restaurant. Metal against metal. Derek cursed and ran toward the kitchen. I followed, heart pounding. The back door, the one that led to the dumpster area, was wide open. Cold air poured in, carrying the faint smell of rain and something else. Something metallic. There were footprints in the puddles outside. Derek grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. "Stay here," he said. I didn't listen. We followed the prints a few feet before they stopped abruptly near the dumpster. Derek swung the light around. Nothing. Then from behind the dumpster came a scraping sound. He moved closer, calling out, "Hey, whoever's out there, you need to—" A hand shot out from the dark, grabbing his arm. He shouted, stumbling backward. I screamed and dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the ground, catching a flash of movement. A face half-shadowed, grinning. It was him, the man from the car. He lunged forward and I bolted inside, slamming the door and locking it. Derek wasn't behind me. "Derek!" I shouted. "Derek!" No answer. I grabbed the phone by the counter and dialed 911, my hands trembling. "Please, someone's trying to break in," I gasped. "Stay calm," the operator said. "Officers are on the way." "Can you describe him?" I turned toward the drive-thru window and froze. He was standing there, just inches away, his face pressed to the glass. He smiled. Then with one hard swing, the glass shattered. I dropped the phone and ran. The last thing I remember is the sirens growing louder, blue and red lights flashing through the broken window as I crouched behind the counter, sobbing. When the officers arrived, the man was gone. Derek was found unconscious near the dumpster, his arm bruised and bleeding, but alive. They never found the guy. No prints, no ID, nothing. I quit the next day. Now every time I drive past that Burger King, I see it, the faint outline of a man standing by the back door in the reflection of my headlights, always watching, always waiting. Story 6, I never thought a job at a fast food joint would change the way I looked at empty rooms. But it's been almost 6 years since that night, and even now I can't stand walking into any dark place without checking the corners first. Back in 2019, I was just another 20-something trying to get by. I dropped out of community college the year before after my mom got sick, and bills didn't stop just because life got heavy. So I took a job at a Burger King off Highway 41, right on the edge of Ashford, North Carolina. A small town you'd probably miss if you blinked driving through. That Burger King was my life for almost a year. I knew every corner of that place. The flickering, fluorescent light above the drink station, the greasy fryer that never quite worked right, and the smell of burnt oil that clung to your clothes no matter how much you washed them. I usually worked the evening shift, 4 p.m. to close, which was midnight on weekdays. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep my lights on and gas in my old Civic. My co-workers were Marcus, the shift lead, and Jenna, who handled the grill. We weren't friends outside work, but we had our rhythm. Marcus handled the money, Jenna worked the fryer, and I took care of cleaning and drive-thru. It was a Thursday night in late October. I remember because the manager, Laura, had just finished decorating the front windows with fake cobwebs and paper bats. There was even a plastic skeleton sitting on top of the soda machine. Halloween was coming up, and we were joking about dressing up for the night shift. I got there around 3:55 p.m., the sky already turning gray. The weather had that heavy stillness that comes before rain. Inside, the place smelled of fryer grease and stale buns. "Evening, Jason," Marcus said, looking up from the counter. "Evening, boss," I replied, slipping on my headset. He grinned. "Don't call me boss. Makes me feel like I'm responsible for this dump." It was a slow night, painfully slow. The kind where time drips instead of moves. Between 7 and 9, we had maybe 3 cars come through the drive-thru and 1 guy walk in to use the restroom. The parking lot was empty except for a single semi parked near the edge, its lights off. By 9:15, Marcus said, "Let's start the close-up early." "Ain't nobody coming through tonight." "Fine by me," I said. "My feet are killing me." Jenna started scrubbing the fryer filters. I went out to the dining room with a broom and dustpan. The neon open sign glowed faintly on the window, its reflection stretching across the tiled floor. That's when I saw him. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, some shadow moving in the glass, but then I realized it wasn't outside. It was inside. A man. He was crouched low behind the last booth, near the corner by the drink station. Tucked in so tight it was like he was trying to disappear. His head was bent forward, hood pulled over his face, his arms wrapped around his knees. For a second, I just stood there, broom frozen midair. I didn't hear the door chime. I didn't see him come in. Hello?" I said, my voice cracking slightly. No answer. He didn't move. "Hey man, we're closed," I said louder this time. Then he shifted. just a small twitch of his shoulder, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. "Jenna," I called, stepping back slowly. "Yeah?" she shouted from the kitchen. "There's someone out here." She came around the corner, wiping her hands on her apron. "What do you mean, someone?" Her voice stopped when she saw him. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. The man stood up, slowly, like his bones were made of rust. He was maybe in his 20s, tall but thin, with a gray hoodie and torn jeans. His shoes were filthy, like he'd been walking through mud. He didn't look at us, just turned and started walking toward the counter. "Sir, we're closed," Marcus called from behind us, appearing from the office. "You need to leave now." That's when the man spoke, voice shaking, low but sharp. "Don't come near me." His tone wasn't threatening. It was terrified, like he thought we were the danger. Marcus frowned. "Look, man, I'm calling the cops if you don't—" "I said don't!" the man screamed suddenly, slamming his hand on the counter. That's when I saw it. A screwdriver gripped tight in his fist. Jenna gasped. Marcus took a cautious step back, eyes locked on the man. All right, Marcus said quietly, trying to stay calm. "We're backing off, okay? Just tell me what you want." The man's chest heaved. I just need what's in the register." "There's no money," Marcus said. "We already dropped it in the safe." The guy's eyes darted back and forth like he didn't believe him. "Don't lie to me," he whispered. Then he jumped the counter. That broke whatever courage we had. Marcus yelled, "Out back! Now!" We bolted. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost slipped on the wet floor. Jenna was crying as we shoved open the back door, the cold air hitting us like a slap. Marcus pulled out his phone and called 911, his voice barely steady as he explained what happened. We hid behind the dumpster listening. Inside there was this dull thud, 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 like someone pounding on the register. Then silence. The dispatcher kept us on the line until the first cruiser arrived. Then another. They went in with flashlights and guns drawn. A few minutes later, they brought him out, handcuffed, head down. His hoodie had fallen back, and I could see his face, pale, sunken, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked empty. The cops said he'd been hiding in the restaurant since just before closing. He must have slipped in while I was taking trash out back. He'd waited behind the booth for us to lock the doors, planning to rob the register once we were gone. What made my blood run cold was what else they found. He had a knife duct-taped under his sleeve. Not a small one either. A kitchen knife, like the kind we used to cut tomatoes. The register he'd been trying to pry open, completely empty. After the cops left, Marcus just stood there staring through the window at the booth the guy had hidden behind. "Damn," he whispered. "He was in there the whole time." We finished closing the store in silence. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in my apartment felt like someone moving just out of sight. The next day, the manager made us start new. Safety checks, 2-person sweeps before closing, locking the dining room early if it was slow. Corporate sent some checklist that made it sound like we were the problem, like we'd just forgotten to follow some rule. But none of that fixed what happened inside my head. For weeks, every time I walked into that restaurant, I felt like someone was watching me. I'd check behind every booth, every corner, even the storage room. Sometimes I swore I heard footsteps after closing. Soft, slow, dragging. I quit 2 months later. Told them it was for school. It wasn't. It was because I couldn't stand that feeling, that someone could be right there, just a few feet away, waiting for the lights to go out. And the worst part? I still live in Ashford. Sometimes when I drive past that Burger King at night, the neon sign still flickers in the window, and for a split second, I can almost see a shadow crouched in that back booth, watching, waiting. Story 7. I never thought my life would shrink to fluorescent lights and the smell of fry oil. I used to live in a neighborhood where lawns were trimmed like museum exhibits, cars gleamed under streetlights, and summer evenings smelled like fresh-cut grass and expensive barbecue. My name is Emily Cartwright, and at 19 I was supposed to be at Emerson University, sipping overpriced coffee in a sunlit library, not sliding fries into paper bags at the Westfield Burger King at 2 a.m. It started with the fall of everything familiar. My dad, once a VP at a boutique investment firm, had lost nearly everything in the 2008 crash. One week we were planning our ski trip to Vermont. The next we were packing up our lives into U-Haul boxes. Mom cried silently most mornings, wiping countertops she never actually cleaned, staring at the walls like they'd betrayed her. Westfield was quiet, too quiet. Elm Street was lined with old brick buildings, most of them shuttered, and the Burger King was at the edge of town, wedged between a gas station and a small laundromat. I took the job because I had no choice. I'd never worked a real job before. My first day, I showed up in jeans too clean, shoes too new, and hands that weren't yet calloused. "Emily, you're on grill tonight. Marcus will show you," said Marlene, the night manager, her voice brisk, eyes scanning me like she didn't believe I'd survive 5 minutes. Marcus. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, broad-shouldered, quiet. Ex-military, he said once, and the discipline in him was evident. His jaw was always tight, hands steady, and even in chaos, he seemed untouchable. "You'll learn," he said without smiling. "Just don't slow me down." I nodded, gripping the spatula like it was a lifeline. My first hour was a disaster. I dropped buns, burned patties, and nearly forgot an order entirely. The crew stared at me, a mix of amusement and pity. By my second month, I was no longer a liability. I still burned things occasionally, but I had rhythm, muscle memory, and I could handle the grill without panic. It was a Friday night when everything changed. The lobby was empty, the hum of the freezers and the fryer filling the silence. Marcus, Janelle, and Hector had closed the registers, wiping tables and sweeping crumbs that would be back by morning. I was at the grill, scrubbing a grease stain with a rag, the smell of charred meat heavy in my nose. The bell above the door chimed. "Welcome to Burger King," Janelle said, her voice too bright for the hour. "How can I help you?" A man stepped in, mid-30s, average build, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans that had seen better decades. Nothing remarkable at first glance, but there was something. He moved slowly, deliberately. "2 double cheeseburgers, please, Rem," he said, voice calm. Janelle typed it in, and he added almost casually, "No buns, no cheese, no bacon." There was a pause. "You want just the patties?" I asked, stepping up beside her. "Yes, and uncooked," he said, almost like he was reciting instructions. "Raw." Straight from the package, my stomach dropped. "I'm sorry," I said, voice shaking slightly. "We can't serve raw meat. Health code." "You've heard of steak tartare, right?" he interrupted, tilting his head. "Yes, but this is fast food. We cook burgers." He smiled, the wrong kind of smile. Pale eyes locked on mine. "Is there a manager I can speak to?" Marcus had appeared silently behind me, like a shadow. "I'm the shift lead," he said evenly. "And she's right. We don't serve raw meat." The man's sigh was soft, almost bored. Then he pulled out a thick stack of bills. Hundreds. "How much would it take?" I froze. Hector stopped moving. Janelle went stiff. Marcus didn't flinch. "Go to the cooler." "Check something," Marcus said quietly to me. "Code. Leave. Stay safe." I grabbed the stack of gloves I had and headed to the walk-in, heart hammering. Through the slatted window of the walk-in door, I saw him unwrap the burger wrapper. My breath caught. He didn't eat it. He held it, like it was a trophy, pressed it to, his face inhaling, eyes closed. Then when he opened them, they met mine. There was something hollow there, something human but not human. The man jumped into his car. Tires squealed. The wrapper in hand, gone in seconds. I ran back inside, shaking. "Marcus! That guy—" "Say nothing to anyone," Marcus said, grabbing my shoulder. "You like this job? You want to keep it?" I nodded, too terrified to speak. The night passed in a blur. The call started soon after. Silence at first, then the occasional thud in the dumpster behind the store. Once a wrapper smeared in red. It didn't smell right. Nobody else saw anything, or they pretended not to. Weeks later, Marcus didn't show up. No call, no explanation. Just his locker, empty except for a single photograph. A woman, early 20s, smiling. On the back, scribbled in haste, "She asked too many questions." I quit shortly after. They didn't argue. No one asked why. Some nights I still drive past that Burger King. Sometimes I swear I see him in the lot, waiting, and I know I'll never forget what I saw. Real horror isn't blood and screams. It's quiet, subtle. A stranger asking for raw meat at 11:30 p.m. A sinking feeling that the world can bend in ways you aren't ready to understand. And the worst part, knowing there's nothing you can do. Story 8, I never thought I'd find myself back behind a fast food counter, not after what happened in my hometown of Meridian, Mississippi years ago. But when the rent was overdue, my car refused to start in the middle of a freezing January night, and the savings I thought would last had evaporated like morning fog. Options became scarce. I told myself this job at Royal Flame Burgers in rural Clanton, Alabama, would be temporary. Just enough to scrape together cash while I looked for something better, something stable, something that didn't smell like fryer oil and bleach. I kept telling myself that as I drove the 20 miles down the empty highway, neon signs flickering like dying fireflies through the humid night. The restaurant sat alone, a squat brick building with chipped paint and a broken open sign that buzzed faintly. The parking lot was cracked and littered with cigarette butts and puddles from the afternoon rain. Inside, it smelled like a mixture of grease, cleaning chemicals, and the faint sweetness of soggy fries left in the trays too long. "Hey, Jessa, first night, huh?" A voice called from behind the counter. I turned to see Tommy, the night shift manager, a wiry man in his early 40s with hair thinning at the crown and hands that always seemed stained with ketchup no matter how many times he washed them. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "First night." "Don't worry," he said, handing me a tattered apron. "Night shift's quiet. Most nights you won't see anyone until the truckers roll in. Keep the place clean, watch the cameras, and for God's sake, don't fall asleep." "I can handle quiet," I said. I hope my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Tommy hesitated at the door. "You sure? Nights can get lonely." "I'm fine," I lied. By 11 p.m., Tommy had left, and I was alone. The quiet settled like a heavy blanket over the restaurant. The hum of the soda machine and the flicker of the fluorescent lights were the only things keeping me company. I leaned against the counter, listening to the storm rolling in outside. Thunder muttered somewhere beyond the horizon, and the wind pressed against the windows like it wanted inside. Then came the screech of tires. A truck barreled past the lot, its lights cutting through the sheets of rain. I flinched at the sudden noise. Seconds later, an unnatural, wet squelch echoed behind it. My stomach churned. I grabbed my raincoat and stepped outside. On the edge of the road lay a fox, mangled, its small body twisted unnaturally. One glassy eye stared up at me. My breath caught. I hadn't expected death to feel so intimate. I nudged it gently with my boot. "Sorry, little guy," I murmured, stepping back. The animal was still, silent, the storm washing over it. I turned to head back inside, and then I saw him. He was standing near the counter, motionless. At first I thought I was imagining it, a trick of the flickering lights. But no, he was real. A man dressed in a grotesque mascot costume, something meant to look like a king, but cheap and horrifying. His crown was crooked, the velvet robe stained, the mask's frozen smile stretched in a way that made my skin crawl. Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He tilted his head. His voice was low, metallic, almost a growl. "Food, and perhaps a kingdom?" I blinked. I think you're in the wrong place. We're about to close." He chuckled, a sound that made my spine tingle. "Oh no, I don't think so." This place called to me. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to move behind the counter. "Fries? Burger? Soda?" "Yes, all of that. But make it special." I did what any reasonable person would do. Made the meal, laid it on a tray, and watched him slowly take a seat in the corner booth. The storm raged outside. Minutes passed. Then he opened the burger. My stomach dropped. Inside, tangled, bloody fur glistened. The fox's remains raw and horrifying. I stepped back. "What the hell are you doing?" He looked at me, eyes visible through the mask's slits, red and unblinking. "King's special meal," he said softly. He ate methodically, deliberately, tearing the meat with his teeth. Every bite sent shivers down my spine. I bolted to the bathroom, retching violently. When I looked into the sink, I saw what made me want to scream. The remnants washed down, clotted in the basin like a warning. A sudden crash outside startled me. I ran back to the front. The mascot was gone. I looked out into the storm, heart hammering. There at the shoulder was a blue sedan, wrecked against a tree. The driver's side door swung open, and inside slumped a woman, her head pressed against the wheel. My stomach lurched, bile rising again. The man stood calmly beside her car, blood smeared around his lips. "I've never tried human roadkill," he murmured almost to himself. "Perhaps tonight is the right night." I screamed. My voice cut through the storm. The world spun. Everything I had known about safety, about reality. Shattered, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights bounced off the rain-slick asphalt. EMTs and police swarmed. I was grabbed, restrained, questioned. Officer Ramirez leaned over me, eyes stern. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" I saw him. He was eating." I couldn't finish. The sedan's interior was worse than I could have imagined. The woman's face had been mutilated, not just by the crash, by him, the mascot. They pulled the security footage. It captured everything. The storm, the fox, the arrival of the man, the burger, the sudden vanish. The last frame froze on him, mask removed, waving at the camera, and then gone. No fingerprints, no ID. Just the mask, tossed somewhere in the woods behind the restaurant. I never worked a night shift alone again. I don't drive down that highway, and sometimes in the dead of night, I wonder if the king has moved on, to new roads, new victims. Because kings, I've learned, always return for their crown. Friends, be sure to tell in the comments which story you like the most, and don't forget to subscribe and like.